Now, this is supposed to be a booktube channel, and I have not been talking about books for ages. Less talking about it, more fixing it. Now, I don't know who has been following the Handmaid's Tale drama on the internet, but it's very, very, very exciting. The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood is something I had to read at university and was a bit like, who is this? What's going on? I feel like a lot of people, especially like cool feminist intellectual people, grew up with her and have read everything by her, but I didn't do that by any stretch of the imagination, and I only discovered her at university when I read The Handmaid's Tale, and I was like, this is... what? The Handmaid's Tale is a pretty harrowing dystopia. It's really, really short, it's really, really famous, and it's all about this dystopian universe where through a series of political events and basically just apathy, America has turned into this place of extreme sexual exploitation where most women can't have children, and the women who can have children are used as handmaids to live as essentially sex slaves in people's houses and birth children. Think Children of Men meets The Village. So recently, the wise capitalist cats thought they would actually invest some money in one of these beautiful pieces of literature and make it into a TV series. It's still in the middle of being aired in the UK. I've seen a couple of episodes and I'm keen. If you're in other countries, have you seen it all yet? Is it all good? I hope so. Anyway, I reread The Handmaid's Tale. I've reread it twice, I think, and I wanted to read it a third time just to like remind myself before I see the show. And while it is this seminal text that I think came out in the 70s, 80s, that's underpinned a lot of like modern dystopia, it reminded me of books that I've read that are potentially better than it or as good. So I wanted to run through 3 of my favourites right now. So the first one, the most obvious place to go if you are hungry for more Handmaid's Tale, is obviously still Margaret Atwood. The only other book that I've read by Margaret Atwood is Oryx and Crake. I rate it 3 times as much as Handmaid's Tale, and I'm saying that The Handmaid's Tale is a really good book, and I've read it twice. It's part of a trilogy. I haven't read the trilogy yet. I will one day read the trilogy, but if you love the immediate, very simple narrative of The Handmaid's Tale that has this underpinning, really, really complicated narrative, it has those elements. It's told from the perspective of the guy called the Snowman, and the premise is that he is the last human on Earth, and he is trying to remember back to before and how everything happened. I don't want to give away too much, but there's a lot of stuff about artificially modifying genes, a lot of stuff about women and objectification and these like horrible love triangles that people can get into. It's really quite like a Shakespearean tragedy, but set in this really strange, sterile world. And if you love The Handmaid's Tale, I urge you to start there. And I will follow you because I will be reading more Margaret Atwood, and shame on me, I haven't yet. Does anybody else do that? Like when they're really, really, really excited about an author, they purposely don't read them because they want to save it. I'm very aware that I've got another like 60 years to live and I don't want to finish all the Margaret Atwood all at once, you know? The second one that I recommend is one that people might not have heard of as much. It's new, it's very new. It came out about 2 months ago, I think, and it's called The End We Start From. It's really short, I think it's about 120 pages. I can compare the way it's told most easily to The Road, but I don't want that to become a cliche. But it is really like The Road in a lot of ways. It follows the life and immediate thoughts of a family that have been moved out of London because London is going underwater. It's got loads of harkbacks to symbolism about arcs and exoduses. It's kind of like a lot of things I've read before and loved, and also like nothing I've ever read before. It's one of those really short books that actually just stops you breathing for 24 hours while you read it. So if what you liked about The Handmaid's Tale was the length and the immediacy and the kind of like fractured way the narrative's put together plus dystopian stuff, that's the one. Third one is Station 11. Now, I read Station 11 years ago, and when I first picked it up, I had the American version, and it gave this idea of what it was that definitely wasn't what it ended up being. So I think for half of the book I was like, what the fuck is this? This is not what I was promised. But if you look at the UK cover, I think it really communicates more what the book actually is. And now, after I've read it, I have really different feelings about it. It deserves way more kudos than I first gave it in my first review, because I keep thinking about it. Even now, like parts of the book still come back to me and I'm like, oh yeah, that reminds me of this thing. Again, it's set in a collapsed world after a lot of people have died from a kind of plague. I can't remember, E. coli or something. It half follows a band of Shakespearean maverick actors who are touring around this like desolate, lawless, very, very dangerous America that's stripped down and like raucous, and they're trying to tour Shakespeare plays and bring things back to people. That's what part of it's about, and I thought the whole thing would be about that. The other part is about this marriage that's crumbling, and it's set before the world falls apart, but there's lots of foreshadowing about how the world's going to crumble. And it's about this woman who writes a secret graphic novel. And there's lots of stuff about graphic novels in it. It's really, like, I don't really know how to explain it. And part of it's set in a abandoned airport where it's been so long since the world crumbled that people have forgotten what the world really was, and the airport turns into half a refugee centre and half of a museum to all these random things that people have found and collected and trying to preserve. It's a very, very strange novel that sold well and sold in the mainstream, but really is a very bizarre experience to read. So if The Handmaid's Tale has just reignited your need for the weird, Station 11 is where it's at. It's just creepy. I think there's some dystopians that like just make me go, oh, that would be scary, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be crazy if the world ended? But then there's some dystopians like Children of Men and like Station 11 that make you reconsider all of the themes around why we're scared of the world crumbling and just go beyond the kind of sick, boring stereotype of a lot of dystopia, which unfortunately, I don't go when somebody's like, oh, it's a dystopian fiction. I'm like, oh, you can keep that, is my gut reaction. But when I read The Handmaid's Tale and then I thought about all the other books that I could compare it to, I realised that there are dystopian fictions that are among my favourites. That's all for now. Leave me some recommendations of things that you would recommend reading after The Handmaid's Tale so we can all look below. If any of you like podcasts, by the way, I have a podcast coming out on Sunday. You can click the link below to listen to the trailer and follow along, subscribe on iTunes if you would like to hear more about that. But if you remember my stupid questions to the Lena series, it's gonna be on those lines, in those vicinities, in those bum cheeks, in that what are these Venn diagrams I'm drawing in the sky. Okay, Frog's Dog out, bye!